New numbers are out this morning on Canada's economy. The latest government data shows Canada's gross domestic product was essentially unchanged in November. That follows a slight decline of 0.3% in October. Contractions in goods-producing industries offset expansions in the services sector. With me now is Pedro Antunes, Chief Economist with the Conference Board of Canada. Hi, Pedro. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So Canada's GDP remaining unchanged in November. In other words, it didn't grow. Is this a concern?
Well, yes, it is. In fact, I think the underlying trend over the entire year has been quite soft. And, if you look at the level of economic activity in November, it's essentially unchanged from where we were at the end of 2024. So this tariff war that we've been facing, not only with the U.S., but also with China, as you just alluded to, this has had an impact across the board on Canada's industries. And the month of November was a slight decline. It does look like the quarter now, given Statistics Canada's preliminary estimates for December, it does look like we're going to see a quarter which is flat. And that's not a very good start to 2026, unfortunately.
We're also seeing today, and I think we might be able to bring it up, that the TSX is plunging. What do you make of that?
Well, we have seen a lot of, strength in equity markets globally, but in Canada as well. I do think there's that strength is supported by fundamentals nonetheless. Certainly when we look at resource prices, when we look at the services industry in Canada, things have been going well. And I do think there's a buoyancy there that's legitimized. In other words, we're not too worried about a bubble perhaps. But of course, when we hear bad news, interest rates have come down. This is, not surprising that we'll see a little anxiety and a little movement in equity markets as well.
What does this mean for the average Canadian living out in Ottawa or maybe in Alberta somewhere?
Well, I think overall the weakness in economic activity and the uncertainty really with respect to where we'll land on tariffs with the U.S. and our trade situation with the U.S., all of that has led to not only weak economic activity that we just heard from Statistics Canada, but also weak hiring and investment intentions. And this is a concern for essentially, longer term economic performance in Canada. So, and of course, when you're talking about hiring, that is, essentially reflected on wages and people's ability to buy and raise their income and revenue. So obviously, this is impactful for Canada's households.
Another place I wonder if this will have an impact for the average Canadian is the possible Bank of Canada rate cut this year. Does this data change the outlook for that?
Yeah, certainly with the numbers that came out today, the fourth quarter is looking a little weaker than what the Bank of Canada just put out in their monetary policy report. But I don't think this changes the picture yet. I did talk about weak employment and hiring intentions, but the last few months have been not too bad for hiring in Canada. The unemployment rate ticked down a little bit. So I do think the Bank of Canada will hold at where it is. The good news is that we do still have room to maneuver to lower rates if needed, if things get a lot worse. I think for now, we're still expecting Canada's economy over the next year to tick ahead, not strong, but keep perhaps the pace that we've seen over the last year. And that would, I think, keep the Bank of Canada on the sidelines for now.
Pedro, thank you very much for this. Great chatting with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me again.